another episode of Hidden Stories Healed Now, where we provide joy, love, and hope to those people who may be facing a journey or a challenge. And we hope that by the end of this, you get something that will help you to know you're not alone. Today's episode, I am so honored to have David and Shane Porter with me. And you know, we're going to talk about something that is very, very difficult. And I can only relate because this one hits home for me. We're going to talk about as a father learns that his son has leukemia at a very young age and the challenges that you go through. I will tell you that as a great aunt of my great nephew that I love so much, as he has faced the same challenges, we know that all things are possible. We know the healing can be there and will be there. And you will see that by the end of this episode. So welcome, David and Shane. I'm glad to have both of you.
Thank you. We're honored to be here.
So David, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
I want to, if you will share with the audience the story about your son having leukemia and how you found out.
Oh, absolutely. We're going to go back to 2009. It was fall during that time, and we were actually, planning a family trip to go home to California in order to just celebrate Thanksgiving. I always will tell this to any parent that I will come across, that when your children are young, when you're hugging them, when you're doing everything that you can to make sure that they're safe, you want to check them. If something is there that wasn't there before, don't ignore it. And that's exactly what I did when it came to Shane on the couple of days before we left. And he had, at that time, a bump on the back of his elbow right here. And to anyone like that, you sing, you give a hug and stuff like that, and you go down his arm, it's like, hey, that wasn't there before. And then you say to yourself, okay, well, we're gonna go and stuff like that. So I talked over my wife, and we said, we're gonna end up, when we come back, we're gonna get this looked at immediately. Just because we were on a time setting. He was just like, it's nothing. So he was just 9 years old at the time. So to come back, when we were actually on our way back, and when we came back to Georgia, at that time, his entire arm became inflamed. And the secondary lymph node in this area started to swell, and it immobilized his arm. So it was hurting him, so we knew something was going on. So we immediately went to the doctor, had him evaluated. And then based upon their findings, he came up with, well, let me just kind of digress real fast back to the time when you bring him back to the office after the biopsy has already been performed. And then sitting in that room, when my wife and I went into the room, he essentially closed the door, and you get that gut feeling. You know something's wrong. And he was just outside playing, being a 9-year-old boy. So he didn't know anything of what was going on. So it was at that time when you hear the worst news ever is that your son has leukemia. And I just remember the world, everything just going silent. And it was just the main one that he had, which was a more typical one, was acute lymphoblastic leukemia, better known as ALL. And the doctor just kept talking, and you're just hearing words, and everything just kind of just goes dark. And I just felt my wife come close to me, and then I just remember grabbing her, and I just remember holding her. And the doctor was talking, but I just said, just please, just give me a minute, just hold on 1 second. And then we just looked at each other, and we just told ourselves, we're not going to do this. We're not going to fall apart. We're not going to do anything but be strong for this little child that we're going to have to change. His world is about to change. So that was the initial portion of it when we first got the actual diagnosis, but there was, of course, a plethora of more things that we were going to have to do. And the doctor we went to was just excellent. He was an excellent surgeon. He immediately called Emory, in this case right now, the Aflac Clinic at Eggleston, and immediately got us in there. I mean, if he would have been that same day, he would have got us in there that day. Action is the most important thing you can do when it comes to any diagnosis. And it's something that we, the next day, had him on our way there. But the hard part was driving home with this little boy in the back whose life is just, everything is just normal to him, and have to go and explain to him exactly what was going on. And so that he would be able to understand that your life is about to change, and not just his life, my wife's life, everyone within our circle, our church family, that was so instrumental in helping us bridge the gap of care and service and just support. Because just like so many people, I said, we were the only ones out here. We moved out here in 2005. So we were the only ones here. So, our support system's way in California. So it was a hard adjustment at that phase. But as soon as we got home, we just got on the phone and called everyone. We said, the only thing we want is your prayer. We let them know exactly what was going on. But we just said, at this stage, all we want is your prayer. And that's what they gave us in abundance at that time. But that was the initial, like I said, the initial diagnosis and letting us know exactly what happened.
I can only imagine the emotions that were going through as you're listening to this diagnosis. You come back, you get to a surgeon, you get to the hospital. When was it, at what point, that you learned what this journey was going to be about? And how did you begin to get yourself prepared to help your child going through this journey?
As you can probably see right now, even to this day, it affects me, because it was buried. I'm big at burying stuff, but the thing that, once we got to the hospital, I knew for a fact that I'm like, I need to know everything that's going to happen. I need to know what's the first step, the second step. If anyone would know me, I'm big on steps, folders, tabs. I need to go to information immediately. So my wife and I are exactly the same. So when we were at the hospital, they essentially had to admit him that same day, because he had to start the treatment. And in this case, of course, have a shunt put into his chest. So, you can't have administered medicines, needles going into you. So they just have one thing that clips right onto your chest. It's right under the skin. He, of course, still bears the scar right now. Yeah. And it's just so that way, every time he comes in, it just attaches. So they know for a fact that that was the first thing, is to get the shunt attached. And the one thing I loved about Eggleston was that they gave it to you in sizable chunks, because they know that you are in a fog. There is zero way you could try to absorb all this information. And with my wife and I being the team that we were absolutely, and are still to this day, pull on each other to make sure that if I'm missing something, please let me know if you got it, so that we can write it down. But they had the doctors, the nurses, counselors that all came through in succession, not all at once, to let us know, okay, this is what's going to happen first. This is what the treatment's going to look like. This is how it's going to affect him. And you need to be ready for that. And that's the main thing. You have to be ready, because if you let all this hit you, it's going to take you down. It's going to make you depressed. It's going to make you ask why. Why is this happening to my child? But you can't ask those questions now, because of how aggressive this can happen. When they did his first blood work, he had 90% cancer cells in his blood and bone marrow. And to hear that, that was going to just sit you down. But the doctor said that, you know what, you're here now. We're going to eradicate this. I remember that word. He said, we're going to eradicate this. And I know what we need from you guys right now is just to be here and get him through this, talk to him, make sure a 9-year-old understands that, why am I being stuck with all these needles? Why am I having all these bone marrow biopsies? Why am I having all this stuff done to me now? This man right now, and I call him a man for sure, taught me more about strength and how to deal with things, because his temperament was rock solid.
So we're going to take a station break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more, because I'd love to hear from Shane as well, and explore a little bit more of those opportunities that you had and the things that you learned from him too. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton. seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
Welcome back. Shane, I'd love to get your perspective. You are 21 years old now,
Yes,
and it's been a journey.
it definitely has.
And my question to you is, do you remember any of it?
I would definitely say I do remember bits and pieces of it, but normally, like, if my sister or my parents like say something towards me or anything of the sorts, then I remember again bits and pieces. But with one example is that I had a Disney cruise because we did a Make-A-Wish. We had a Make-A-Wish Foundation, and that one really stuck out to me because everyone. And of course, the doctors and nurses, everyone was like saying, okay, you got to do this. Like, it's amazing. It's a good experience. And everyone wanted different things, different wishes. I just wanted to be with my family and just have fun. That's honestly like my whole mentality throughout this journey that I had. And I picked a cruise. I picked the Disney cruise. And when we got there, unfortunately, I wasn't really feeling that well. But then at the same time, I looked at my parents, I looked at my sister, I said to myself, I'm going to have fun even though I'm not feeling that well. And then I would have fun, ride the slides, go into the ocean, see dolphins, stuff, all that, all of the good things basically. And that's what helped me out mostly.
So you remember your Disney cruise,
Yes.
and you remember being with the family and all of that, praise God you were able to have some joy.
Yes.
As you're going through this journey. So, David, as you were going through each one of these steps and you're helping your son and helping him to overcome, how did you find it most helpful to explain what was happening? Because they're giving it to you in little chunks and you're having to tell him, okay, we got to go back to the hospital. We have to do this. How did you work with being able to tell him just enough that he could understand and help him to be able to handle what was next?
Being at the age that he was, it was easy because Shane is a very easygoing son, number one. So I have a tendency to try and be as upfront as I can with my children and let them know this is what is going to happen and this is how it's going to happen. So the conversations we had at the time were just, Shane, there is something going on inside you. And this is what it is. It's going to take you on a different journey right now, but we're going to be right here with you. And there's going to be some days you're not going to want to do this. And at those days, I'm just going to ask you, can you please just help me help you? So when you make it like that, and once again, the facilities are so bright and colorful and they have so many games and everything, they have a large amount of distractions for children. Mm-hmm. So it made it easier for us based on where we were. But with him, it was just easy because he understood. He was like, okay, this is what we have to do? Okay. That was literally and he made it so easy for us.
That's, I'm sure there's emotions that are going through, the child at the time and things that you may not even remember, that you were feeling at that time, as you're going through the journey. You mentioned before that he has taught you a lot. How did you take this journey of going step by step and allow it to help you versus feeling that you were giving and giving and giving and trying to find a way that there was a solution and hope at the end?
It was definitely one of the times when I call it a low day. Anyone who has cancer right now, you get any infection, you're going to be hospitalized. You get a fever, you're in the hospital. And it was during one of those hospital stays where he had a bone marrow biopsy. He was trying to keep his fever down. And I felt at that point, because it was getting toward the middle portion of his intense treatment, I was coming apart. And my biggest thing is that I can't come apart in front of him. And I would always be out of the room. And I said, Dave, you can't be out of the room. So I would come back in the room. And right before he went into his biopsy, he probably would never remember this, but he would put his hand on mine. He said, Dad, it's all right. It's okay for you to be in here with me. And that was right before he was put under for his his spinal tap, bone marrow biopsy and spinal tap. So at that moment, he gave me more strength to carry me through the rest of it. That was my low point, but he was up here. So he was able to make me just say, okay, if you can do this, Shane, I can do anything. And that's what he gave me during that time.
What a blessing.
Yes.
And what a gift, you know, when you're going through these times and your child, you know, as a parent, you're watching this and looking at them going through all of these ups and downs.
Yes.
You know, and not only that, the side effects.
Correct.
Right? And one of the things I think that, you know, a lot of people are struggling with is, how do I adjust watching the side effects when I can't help?
The best thing that you can do, and a lot of people say, is just to be there when those side effects happen, because with steroid medication and all kinds of the actual cancer medications that you are living or having to give at that time, being there for the child is one thing, but also making sure you're encompassing the parents, because they're the ones that are going to have to really, really, really buckle down to know to help the child. Yeah. But the only thing you can do is literally put your arms around them and let them know that this too shall pass. I did that many, many times. You know, he wasn't able to heal like anyone else would have to do. So there were many times that we would have to stay in the bathroom with him for hours. But as long as he had someone there, as long as you are there, I would tell anyone, any parent that has this unfortunate diagnosis, that as long as you know that child knows that you're there, that is always going to be the piece that's going to carry him or her through. And so I would tell anyone, and it's not just the parents, like I said, just with aunties and uncles and cousins, just making sure that that child sees you and hears you, and just putting your arms around him or her will always carry them through. Even if it's just for that 1 minute, that's the only time you needed it for. That's the only time they needed it for. Mm-hmm. So it's always good just to have that really, really bonded communication with them.
Shane, you know, as you say that you've been putting bits and pieces together and going through school and all of that, how did you handle school after all of this? Was it hard for you to adjust with going to school and making things happen?
I would definitely say yes. There were some downfalls to, unfortunately, going through chemotherapy and stuff like that. I would usually, because before I got the news that I had cancer, I would run a lot, I would remember. And I was pretty fast. And then when I got back on the track, I was exhausted. I would definitely say I was very exhausted. I was like, oh, this is new.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I learned something else new. I learned to focus more on other things than just trying to be fast or trying to be a certain thing. I learned to basically like adapt to everything almost. Like right now I'm adapting to getting a new housing or not getting new housing. Like there's multiple things that you go through in life that can, of course, get you a step up or either a step down. But then you gotta also think that overall, you're learning new things every day, so.
You're amazing. We're gonna take a station break, and when we come back, we're gonna see if our audience has a question or a comment. We'll be right back.
Every story has a hidden element that is not often shared. Hidden Stories, Healed Now, with host Vicki Wright-Hamilton, seeks to share the hidden gems in real-life experiences. Our guests are ordinary people sharing their stories of overcoming insurmountable odds while providing hope and inspiration.
Welcome back. You know, we talk about getting them back in school. You talked about Shane. Shane, you talked about some of the things that you turned the bad into good, right? And how it has helped you to grow and to develop. How did you help him get through school through this episode as he was going through this? Did he miss a lot of school? Was he in? Was he out? How did you handle that? Because I know that's a parent's concern.
Believe me, it's a huge concern. The thing that we had to do, once again, thank God for Eggleston, thank God for Aflac Clinic. They have schools at the hospital.
Yeah.
So what happens is that they're not going to let any child try and miss anything, so that way you're going to add more stress to the parents. So in this case right now, we had classrooms down at the bottom of the building. They would put them in a wheelchair and come down with his treatment right then and there. Yeah. They have teachers down there that for every one teacher that you have is going to give you a credit of a week. So the one-on-one ratio expands exponentially. Yeah. So that way for his one-on-one time, he was able to get through this. After that, he did not miss any school. He was an A student from the work that he had just from the teachers coming through. The other thing you need to absolutely make sure of, you, just like before, you have to be an advocate for your child, and even more so because what happens is that everyone in the school sees this. Once the treatment is done, once his hair grows back, once he gets his weight back, they see this. He's fine. He doesn't need anything else. That is an absolute false. You need to make sure your child is on a 504 program. Be that advocate, because you will have to fight. And I hate to put it in this kind of light. You have to fight for him, because every time that you go meet with the teachers, get his special privileges, testing time, everything, the medication has a cognitive effect, and not just when everything is done. It's lingering. He's in college right now. He's in Kennesaw State, a junior in Kennesaw State right now. And he's still on the 504 program. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you have to make sure you're an advocate for your child.
For those that may not be aware, what is the 504 program?
The 504 program is set up for children who are either had sickness, any kind of cognitive disabilities, or anything that's going to prevent them from being within a classroom. It gives them more time. It gives them more resources. It gives them more attention when it comes from the teachers, so that way they know exactly what's going on with your child. It is crucial that you make sure that you have the meetings with your children, with the teachers, meeting with the teachers, meeting with the principals, and have it frequently for every step of their educational career. It is so important. It's been such a blessing because it's helped him get to where he's at now, whereas it would have been, I can't even imagine what it would have been like without it.
So Shane, how do you feel about going to college?
There's a mix of emotions, joy, happiness, acceptance, a little bit of some challenges, but at the same time, like how I was saying before, learning new things is all I know of. And of course my parents, my family, friends helping me out, and of course they learn, of course, of how everything is. It really does help. It really does help that they push me towards my goal in life is to be an engineer. So I definitely am pushing through that, and then just learning new things.
Well, you will be an engineer.
Yeah, I will be.
You will. You most absolutely certainly will. And if I could just add one more other thing on there with the other, when it comes to resources, Camp Sunshine, Lighthouse, Super Sibs, for all these things, these organizations are crucial to the absolute development of any children who have cancer or in any kind of illnesses that they are being presented with. Yeah. It affects everyone. His sibling, his sister was so supportive when there's a program, like you said, called Super Sibs. So that way the siblings have a camp to go to, just like how the cancer patient has a camp to go to, which was called Camp Sunshine. So it's just, there's a lot of resources out there, and the counselors which should be able to come in the hospitals and be able to give you a list of them. Reach out to them. It is so helpful.
Awesome. Well, let's see if we have a question or a comment from the audience.
So David and Shane, your story is so touching. My son also is on an IEP, so thank you for that additional information to remind parents. But I applaud you because, as a father, that you stayed in there with your son, and that not that father that ran away and left a mother with children to bear this, such a difficult time. But my question is now that Shane looks like he's doing very well, how are you guys handling like the process of, is he still going through the cancer? Is it still there, or is he completely recovered?
By all God's grace, he is completely in remission.
Praise God.
He is. There is no, with that being said, you always have your guard up. I mean, like I said, I love my son more than anything. And I still find myself grabbing his arms to make sure that there's nothing there. But I also told him to educate him, let him know, make sure when you're out of my care, that you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Because you know the warning signs and don't ignore them. So he's all good.
Yep.
Thank you so much for your question.
Thank you.
You know, as we see, there's so much uncertainty in life. And there's one thing that doesn't have a number on it, doesn't have an age limit, it's health. And if I can just encourage each and every one of you, take care of yourselves. Give yourself all of the love that it takes for your health. Keep your bodies in order. When something's not right, don't hesitate. Go and find out what it is. We always have that fear of getting bad news, but not dealing with bad news, we can't heal it. And we're thankful that Shane is healed, that he is 100% covered. I want to thank David and Shane for joining us today and sharing your testimony and your story. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Hidden Stories Healed Now. Remember, for every hidden story that you let out, you give freedom and you give joy and you give hope to someone else. See you next time.